Please be upstanding for Her Worshipful the Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
Welcome to this meeting of the Council. My name is Councillor Beth Rowland. I'm the Mayor of Wokingham and I will chair this meeting. Before we start, I'd like to go through a few preliminaries. Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. A reminder that members do need to stand when speaking in the chamber. May I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution, and I would like to remind members to be mindful to speak directly into their microphones when speaking. If members turn away from the microphone, the sound will not be picked up for online attendees. Do we have any apologies?
We do. Councillor Gary Cowan and Councillor Tony Skews.
Thank you. Can we take the minutes of the previous meetings, please? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Rebecca.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Mayor. We also have apologies from Graham Howe and John Helsall.
Item 90, minutes of the previous meetings. May I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of November as a correct record? Please, may I have a show of hands? That looks like a majority to me. Thank you. I'm going to sign the minutes of the meeting. Are there any declarations of interest? Stephen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I need to declare an interest in relation to item 105 on the agenda as a director of Loddon Homes Limited and Wokingham Borough Holdings Limited.
Prue, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm also a director of Wokingham Holdings Limited, so I forgot what it's called, WDC Holdings, and I'm also the chair of Berrybrook Homes and WHL, which are also companies owned by the council.
Thank you.
And that's at item 105.
Councillor Firminger. Michael, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a declaration of interest with regard to item 96. I have a half share of my late parents' home in the borough, and following legal advice, I will withdraw from the chamber for this item, so I will not vote on this item or take part in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Cornish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm declaring an interest also in agenda item 105 as a non-exec director of Loddon Homes Limited and WBC Holdings Limited.
Councillor David Hare.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a non-executive director of Optalis, and that's item 105.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. We have public question times now and have 30 minutes for questions. Oh, sorry, yeah, I got a couple of announcements for you. Can I say thank you to all of you who contributed to the Christmas collections for the food bank. Woodley Food Bank were absolutely thrilled to bits with the bags and boxes of goods that they collected from here. And I'd also like to thank publicly the children from our local schools who took part in the Mayor's concert. It was the first Mayor's concert for some years because of COVID, and it was an absolutely fabulous event. And I hope those of you that were there can understand how thrilled I was that it took part. And it was lovely to see children from my own schools where I'm a governor taking part, and all the staff. Such a lot of hard work put in and an absolutely thrilling event. Thank you very much to all of them. And I hope next year's concert will go ahead in the same way. It was such a good event. And thank you to all of you who came. Right, now we're going to public questions times. I'd like to remind executive members that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and we have got the timer going. We've 7 public questions. Mr. Stevens, please, would you put your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the executive member for Climate Emergency and Resident Services please explain how it is proposed to stop Thames Water from dumping untreated sewage into local waterways? During recent heavy rainfall, sewage pumping station at Arborfield has been discharging untreated sewage directly into Barkham Brook. And earlier this year, Thames Water has been fined £3.3 million after it discharged millions of litres of untreated sewage into 2 rivers near Gatwick in 2017, killing more than 1,400 fish.
I think, thank you for your question. That question has been handed to me to answer my role in environment. Whilst the council shares your concerns over the discharge of raw sewage into our local rivers, unfortunately, we do not have any powers to undertake any enforcement action over these incidents. The regulation of sewage discharge is a matter for the Environment Agency, who are the body with legal powers of enforcement. However, the council continues to engage locally with both the EA and Thames Water, and indeed Thames Water very recently attended a council overview and scrutiny meeting where they were questioned on a wide range of issues. I may add that to change the current discharge situation would require massive capital investment, and Thames Water's ability to borrow was compromised by the level of debt accrued under the previous ownership of Macquarie. While paying out billions in dividends and bonuses, they simultaneously racked up billions in debt, to the point where 28 pence out of every pound that you pay to Thames Water goes to service their debt. This ultimately arises from the ideological privatisation of a monopoly essential service. And while the Lords attempted to address discharges via Amendment 45 during the passage through Parliament of the Environment Act, the government chose to defeat the amendment and to maintain the status quo. John Redwood, James Sunderland and Theresa May all voted against the Lords' amendment. They are clearly happy with sewage in our rivers.
Stephen, sorry, Paul, do you have a...
Can I have a supplementary question?
Yes.
Sewage outfall into rivers is likely to be compounded by the increased flood risk due to climate change. And the floodplain of Barkham Brook, for example, and the River Loddon are also just below a Category A dam at Bearwood Lake. Can we offer any reassurance, or can Wokingham offer any reassurance to potential occupiers of any new homes to be built on current or future flood risk areas that they will be able to insure them? In proposing, for example, to develop the Loddon Valley Garden Village, strategic development location with up to 4,500 additional houses, are we not in great danger of building tomorrow's problems today?
I think that's probably a question that's better addressed to the Environment Agency, because ultimately they're the enforcement body and they're the ones that have the powers.
Thank you, Ian. Moses, would you like to ask your question, please?
Okay, my question is, with the planned change to bi-weekly bin collection, I'm concerned about whether the council now has more realistic figures of the cost effectiveness of the change. I want to ask if the council has considered the likely environmental impact due to increased rodent infestation and the associated cost of dealing with and managing the health implications on the residents.
Thank you for your question. The costs and savings for this project have been detailed in the full report, which was considered by overview and scrutiny in February 2023 and subsequently by executive in March 2023. The finances were calculated through two independent waste management consultancies, the Waste and Resources Action Programme and Eunomia. There is a robust financial monitoring process in place to ensure spending is to budget, and the actual costs and savings will be known by the end of March 2025. There are no substantial health effects as a result of this change. This has been confirmed in a 2007 review by Cranfield University and Enviros. Both organisations found no evidence, and I quote, no evidence that alternate week waste collections will cause any significant health impacts for residents, or that any health impacts are likely to be significantly greater than those associated with weekly collections. It also found that common sense steps, I quote, such as closing bin lids can easily prevent odours or vermin from being a problem. The use of the food waste bins will also reduce any impacts, and these will continue to be collected on a weekly basis.
Moses, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. General waste may not include food, but it includes other items that attract rodents, such as used nappies, tissues, sanitary products, and pet waste. How does the council intend to address this?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that question.
Okay, I'm saying general waste does not include food, but it involves items like that attract rodents, such as used nappies, tissues, sanitary products, and pet waste. So how does the council intend to tackle these effects, although they are not directly food waste?
Well, as I said in my answer, an independent review confirmed in 2007 by Cranfield University and Enviros found that there were no evidence that alternate week waste collections will cause any significant health impacts for residents. And they would have looked at all of those aspects in coming to that conclusion.
Thank you. The next question is from John Sefton. John, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for the member for the Environment, Sports and Leisure. Road cleaning, footpath cleaning and bird cutting, etc. for 21-22, 22 to 23 was not carried out in accordance with the schedule stated in the consultation document issued in 2023. This would have resulted in savings for these years. What was the saving over these 2 years?
The street cleansing and grounds maintenance contracts contain expected output standards that equate to indicative frequencies, which were provided for the purpose of the consultation. There was no saving made during those years as the contracted work was undertaken. Furthermore, the contracts allow us to easily review performance and issue a penalty if the output standards are not met.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do.
Thank you.
When can we expect the schedule for 24-25 to be published?
That is detail that I don't have. We can provide you with a written answer.
Thank you. The next question is from James. James, would you like to put your question, please?
Thank you, Matt. My question is on behalf of Astridge Park, a local grassroots football club that hires facilities at Montague Park and Cantley Park. Prior to March 2023, the council charged VAT on all sports pitch bookings, but an exemption known as VAT LP 19200 on bookings in blocks of 10 or more meant that the club did not pay and the council did not collect VAT on most of the bookings that we made. In March 2023, HMLC ruled that none of the bookings were liable for VAT. The council has continued to charge users at the VAT inclusive rate, keeping the benefit of the tax cut for themselves. However, because the exemption that we used to take advantage of no longer applies, we are paying thousands more, approximately 20% than last year, for the same facilities. The service level agreement for Cantley that both parties signed in 2021 caps annual price rises at 3% until 2026. We first queried this issue with the council in June 2023 and have yet to receive a substantive response. I would like to ask the executive member if they accept that by retaining the VAT savings for themselves and greatly increasing the costs that the club is paying, the council is in breach of the SLA and what their plans are to remediate this.
Thank you, Mr. Viper. You get me because we decided it was a finance question. As you correctly suggest, in March 2023, the HMRC made a public statement agreeing to change their stance in respect to charging VAT on sports pitch bookings. Despite this statement, we were aware of further review was being undertaken and that further guidance would be issued once that was complete. At the time when this was highlighted, Wokingham Borough Council took external advice on that position, and we were advised to hold off from making any changes to our VAT requirement on sports pitches until the full and longer term position was clarified. Sadly, in our experience shows that sometimes government bodies issue statements or policies that are not ready to be implemented yet, and things often change before we actually get to see the details and required to act on them. The good news is that sports pitches have now appeared on the HMRC advice very late in 2023. We are currently working through all of the detailed changes required in order to align how our fees are classified for VAT purposes. I can assure you that you and Ashridge Park Football Club that the council has at no point increased its own element of the fees or that has been charged, and that the VAT part of the fees was only ever expected to be passed on to HMRC. Now that we finally have the full and confirmed understanding, we are working to review how much VAT has been paid to HMRC, and we will recover any overcharged payments. These overpayments claimed will be used to repay any organisations that were overcharged. We are working to do this as quickly as possible, and we'll be in touch with all organisations affected in due course. So it's good news.
Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Would you care to put more detail on what in due course actually means, please? Are we talking weeks, months?
Sadly, I can't because we're dependent on what HMRC does and what they will allow us to do. So I did ask the question as well when it came through, but unfortunately we can't put a date on it. But it'll be in a reasonable time, I hope. So.
Thank you. The next question is from Guy Grandison. Guy, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I ask the executive member to please give me an update on the progress of the playing pitch strategy that was committed to come in January 23?
Thank you for your question. At the January 2023 executive meeting, it was agreed to reassess the needs of early and lower early area within a strategic review of all playing pitches. This review is being undertaken in parallel with the work progressing on the local plan update, as there are obvious interdependencies.
Yeah, do you have a supplementary?
I do. It is dependent on the local plan update. So when will the local plan update come? Because right now we are being left behind, and 40% of matches being abandoned due to pitch issues, due to waterlogging, etc. That's not very good for grassroots sports. Can we get a move on, please?
The local plan update is not within my portfolio. I cannot comment on any timescale for that.
Thank you. The next question is from Philip Meadowcroft. Philip, would you please ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. During the first 9 months of 2023, Wokingham made £75 million worth of loans to cash-strapped authorities. Wokingham councillors and officials have repeatedly emphasised to me that these loans, including the 10 million lent to bankrupt Wokingham Borough Council last June, Borough Council, I hope I've made that clear, were underwritten or guaranteed by the Treasury. They have referred me to sections 6 to 13 initially, then just to sections 6 and 13 only in the Local Government Act 2003 in support of their entrenched belief that Treasury guarantees for these loans actually existed. Nowhere in section 6 or 13 do the words guarantee, underwritten, Treasury or government appear. Councils and officials appear to be persisting in misleading and deceiving full council and the Wokingham residents and council taxpayers they represent with false and misleading statements justifying their actions, which they now cannot actually show and prove to be true. This, in my view, is tantamount to a material and significant deception. When and how, please, will the truth be told, together with an apology?
Thank you, Mr. Meadowcroft. Inter-authority borrowing and lending has been common practice nationally over many decades, and it is used as a standard and common mechanism by councils to address peaks and troughs in cash flows. I can confirm that all of the £75 million in loans that you referenced and that have reached their maturity date have been repaid on time with full interest and no issues. No council anywhere has ever defaulted on these loans. Your question is similar to the question you asked at our executive on the 30th of November, which is where it is explained to you that our loans to councils have the backing from the Treasury, and the Local Government Finance Act is mentioned in our SIPFA guidelines. In the case of Woking, it is also mentioned in their publicly available S114 notice that all existing contracts will be honoured by borrowing from the Public Works Loan Board or Treasury if necessary. The reference to the Local Government Act 2003 was provided directly to you by our Chief Financial Officer. It was not to demonstrate a guarantee of any specific loan, but to point out an aspect of the legal framework under which inter-authority loans take place. The specific guarantee to repay specific loans is put in place through individual contracts, using Treasury management brokers who are approved by the Financial Conduct Authority. I stress that this does not mean the Financial Conduct Authority approves every individual transaction. All of our loans have the required agreements in place, which includes lender protection, as set out in Section 2 of the Local Government Act 2003. Our strategies and processes to borrowing and lending include the individual transactions that are regularly subjected to audit. Due to commercial sensitivities, we can only refer you to the legal documents that are publicly available, and I'm suspecting that's not going to be detailed enough for you. I'm sure you honestly believe there is something in what you are saying, but I'm afraid it is not correct. I can assure you that we are all acting within the law. Unfortunately, your question attacks the integrity of our officers who manage these funds and contracts, and they're the ones who have many years of experience doing so. The best approach I can suggest is coming back after March the 8th, I believe it is, the money comes back, and come back to our next meeting and ask us then how things went with this loan.
I'm afraid, members, we're out of time. If you have a supplementary, Mr. Meadowcroft, could we have it in writing, please? Oh, sorry, Imogen, it was you that was out of time. Mr. Meadowcroft, do you have a supplementary?
Despite my repeated attempts over the past 6 weeks, the executive member for finance, together with the council's financial officers, have not come anywhere near answering my straightforward question about central government guarantees for loans Wokingham makes to other local authorities. At the beginning of your reply, you said that all the 75 million loans have been repaid. And then at the end, you told me that one of them hasn't been paid because it's not yet due, and that's the Woking one on March the 8th. Your answers have been evasive, and this to me is deeply worrying, and it's ominous. And others in the chamber might share my pessimism. But let's try to move on, shall we? My supplementary question is, what is the real truth, please, and why are you so determined to hide it from me and everybody else?
I'm sorry, Mr. Meadowcroft, but I'm afraid you've got that wrong, because we're not hiding anything from anybody. This information is public information. It's in our Treasury management strategy, and it's practice that we've been doing for more than anyone can remember, more than 20 years. There is, you seem to think there's something wrong, but I'm afraid that's not the case. Everything is within the law, and our officers are, they've been doing this for years. So I don't understand why you are pursuing this route. All I can suggest is come back after the loan has been repaid. And I might add that I didn't say all of the loans had been repaid, but this one obviously is due to come back in March, early March. Come back and we can tell you how it went. Thank you.
The last question is for Jim Fruin. Jim, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you. In the interest in time, I'm quite happy to the question to be asked in my name.
Thank you.
Okay, it's me again. The 10 million loan was made with an interest rate of 4.75%, meaning there is an expected return of £357,000. This is for the 274 days or 9 months that was agreed for this investment. Wokingham Borough Council paid no arrangement fees or legal fees on this transaction. Only the borough pays arrangement and legal costs, which are covered by the brokers. Every council in this country uses loans and borrowing to manage their cash flow, which can fluctuate significantly depending on the receipt of incomes, grants, and the profile of expenditure, which includes larger capital schemes such as well as ongoing revenue costs, such as salaries and contract payments. A good example is SIL money from a developer, which is ring fenced for infrastructure. We don't get all the money from the developers at once, as it comes in slowly as properties are sold. While we may not have the money to begin working on a project, we can lend it to another council for a short while where it's left to generate interest. All of the income generated through the interest payments on these loans is revenue, and it's fed into our overall financial position of the council, which obviously revenue is the thing that we are desperate for.
Jim, do you have a supplementary?
Please, thank you. To help, it's obviously a complex and sensitive topic. So to help, my supplementary is quite a simple one. Can you please provide detail of the process applied to these loans within Wokingham? Who defines the need? Who authorises and who signs off the loans? And what scrutiny process is applied? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Basically, it's in the Treasury Management Strategy, which I think you were part of this council last in February when we agreed it. And it's a lot of the information is in there. It delegates the position to our officers, which is headed up by our Chief Financial Officer, and the individual decisions are made by that group of people. And the reason why we delegate it as to the officers, and it's safe to do so, and I think we're limited up to 10 million per transaction and per council, is because councils are safer places to put your money than banks. You know, it's a really safe way to generate income and manage cash flow. So it is a decision that's delegated to our officers. I hope that helps.
Thank you. That concludes public questions. Members who've asked questions, you're very welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but can I ask that you view the meeting from the public gallery, as we have other guests that need to move into your seats. Thank you. Our next item of business is petitions. Does anyone wish to submit a petition? No? Okay, thank you very much. Item 94, the Adult Social Care Fund Future Vision and Charter. We now have a presentation from people from Adult Social Care and people who are cared for. Who's going to lead on this? Do you want to do the I've got names here, and we've got Greg Burgess, Yvonne Thrower, Callum Bell and Jade Gugger, who are all residents who are in our care of our staff. Can't read the writing. Yeah. Use the service users, you've got 15 minutes for your presentation, and then we will have 10 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. We're here today to talk to you about adult social care, because without the big changes to the way we think about and deliver social care, the people who draw on social care risk losing control of their lives and their contact with the people and the things that make their lives worthwhile. What we are sharing here tonight with you is not a strategy, neither a program. What we're asking for here is a way of doing things differently. Something is more collaborative and inclusive for all of us affected.
We want to talk to you about 3 things today. Why adult social care needs to change, whatever social care future vision is, and why it's important to people who live in Woking Borough, and finally how we would like to council and community to be involved and support this change. Sometimes we may need help, or the people we care about, we may need help. This could be because of an illness, a disability, or an event for a short or a long time. This is the role of social care. If you're lucky, you will need support to live your life as you get old. If you're unlucky, you may need help all along the way. But all of us likely do need support for ourselves or a loved one in one way or another. However, when we think about social care, we tend to think of it being for other people. We use images of wrinkly hands, people sat indoors and stuff in uniforms. The media talks about a system in crisis and not about supporting people to live a good life. And we use words like vulnerable to describe people who drew on social care, which suggests these people are helpless.
Care package from adult social care last year. I'm one of the lucky ones. The current social care system is only able to offer the most basic of help. Keep alive care, I like to call it. Getting you washed, dressed, fed, help get into the toilet perhaps, and that's about it. Social care services are not currently designed to give the people an equal opportunity to live a fruitful and valuable life, because there's an assumption that people need looking after and taken care of. However, I've recruited my own supporters who've learned to support me as I want to be supported. They come from different backgrounds, but they're not your traditional carers. In fact, one of them is a builder. I was offered 10 years ago, when I first started needing care and support, I was offered some home adaptations valuing in excess of 25,000. But I turned most of them down because they weren't what I wanted, nor what I needed. I didn't want my home to become a hospital, nor a ballerina studio. It's not about the money. It's about spending the money better by designing services in partnership with the people who need them, to listen to those people and know what matters to them most.
There are 4,300 people employed providing adult social care services in Woking Borough, but the social care system currently relies on an additional workforce of families and friends that is at breaking point. Carers are physically, emotionally, and financially exhausted by the pressure to provide support that is placed on them. The expectation that families will provide care has a huge impact on the lives of unpaid carers. It's hard to be a wife, a husband, partner, son, daughter, mother, or father when you also need to wipe bottoms and help with dressing. Family members often have to give up their own lives to look after loved ones without any recognition or formal support. I am one of those carers. I've been a carer for 23 years to my son Daniel, who has a genetic syndrome, has ASD, is non-verbal, he's learning disabled, his behaviour has challenges, including self-harm. He's severely visually impaired and has hearing loss. He has a deformity of his feet and ankles. He's classed as having complex needs. He's also completely unbending and he's built like a rugby player. I also care for my 83-year-old mother who has mixed dementia. While she's in supported living, she still needs support for paying bills, food shopping, medical appointments and social activity. My eldest son and husband also have their own medical and mental health challenges. I don't have time today to go into every detail of what my life is like, but I can say I'm constantly tired, overwhelmed with trying to support everyone. I'm always bottom of the pile. Carers are constantly told if you don't look after yourselves, you won't be able to look after anybody else. In truth, we don't have much choice. So I ask you today, when is enough? When will you listen? And when will you help us and social care change to help us better? One day it could be you, your child, your grandchild, or your parent. Thank you. This is why we need a new kind of social care. Social Care Future is a movement for change led by people who draw on social care. Social Care Futures has developed a vision for adult social care. This is it. We all want a good life of our choosing, with support if we need it, that helps to protect the things that matter to us.
Thank you, Yvonne. I would like to now draw your attention to the screens around the room. There will be a video playing.
We all want to live in the place we call home, with the people and things that we love. In communities where we look out for one another, doing the things that matter to us. But for many, this is not the reality today. And without big changes to the way we think about social care, many more of us will face losing control over our lives and contact with the people and things that make our lives worthwhile. It doesn't have to be this way. At its best, social care helps us to find, grow, and weave together the people, places, and resources that we can draw upon to live where we choose in the way that we want, with meaning, purpose, and a sense of belonging at every age and stage of life. Realised through innovative approaches like circles of support, shared lives, and gig and sports buddies. We need this to be the reality everywhere and for everyone. To do this, our government needs to invest in social care, and our local councils must work with the people they serve, so creative approaches can take root and begin to thrive. Let's start growing this social care future together. For all our futures. Share this video and join our movement for change.
We have written a local charter with people who have lived experience of adult social care in Wokingham Borough. Our charter says what changes we want to see to achieve the Social Care Futures vision here. The first principle is that we all need to work together as equal partners. Everyone should be involved in the discussions about the support they need to live the lives they want. We believe that our Social Care Futures Charter will help us start conversations about the future of social care in Wokingham and help grow the number of people working together to make changes happen. After today, we will put it on the council website so anyone who wants a social care future in Wokingham can read it, sign it, and get involved with making change. Thank you.
Right, this is my story. How I am involved. I have been involved in social care futures since the start. I go to the social care future meetings and we talk about what needs improving. It's a friendly meeting where people are treated with respect. My views matter and I'm listened to. I would like more people to get involved in social care futures because it's a great way to work together to make things better. Why is it important? For me, social care futures is about equal opportunities. It's about a community that is accessible and includes everybody. It's about me and my friends being able to live the life we want to.
Yeah, so we have 4 major areas that we are covering. So we want cross-party support. We've already had earlier on in another room, we've already had the leader of the council, the deputy mayor, the mayor and the leaders of the party sign our petition, which is on the wall just to your right, if you're just to your right. So, and we also want to make this a co-production with not just us. We want to make it so it also includes the community and the council. So we want to make it that there is a briefing held for each. So we will hold a briefing, and then when there's an election, we will hold briefings for the new councillors coming into the positions of the council position. So say governing party. So say the Liberal Democrats are governing, working not just with the Liberal Democrats, also working with the Conservatives and the Labour Party. Any questions?
Not a question, Callum. Yeah, indeed. Not a question, Callum, but on behalf of the council, and I'm absolutely certain I speak for all councillors in saying thank you for such a powerful, eloquent, and very moving presentation. And as you know, and as you've already referred to, the leaders of all the political groups on the council, the mayor and the deputy mayor, have already signed your charter. And I think that is a sign that we, as a council, are fully committed to the work you're doing. We support you, and we will do everything we can to facilitate all of the objectives of your charter. I think you've wowed us this evening, and we're all very impressed by the power of your testimony. So thank you very much on behalf of the whole council.
Any other questions?
Shahid, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just want to echo the words which Stephen said. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your story with us. I know from first-hand experience, because I run a domiciliary care business myself, and I'm working with the carers, and I know firsthand how enormously valuable work which they do under difficult circumstances. So thank you very much for the work which you do. I'm sure what I'm saying on behalf of all the councillors. We appreciate the work. You do such a valuable work. Thank you very much for that. Just a question. Obviously, all the councillors are here. If just one thing, if you were to ask the council, there's one thing you can do as a council which will really increase the tremendous amount of benefit you'll see. I'm talking about 80-20 rule here, right? So couple of things, one or two they can do, which will make a huge contribution or help you in providing the service which you do. What would that be?
Think differently, act differently, be different, dare to be different. It's not anything, there is no one size fits all for any of us. You can see how different our care needs are. So why do you come to us and say, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do it all the same way? Because care is something we do to people. No, care is something you do for people if you care enough. Think differently, think bigger, dare to question. That's my response anyway.
Thank you. Pauline, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, it isn't really a question, actually. I'd also like to say what Shahid said, which is thank you very much for all the work that you put into caring. I know how difficult it is, and I would like to thank you. And I'd also like to thank the officers, because they've been open enough to recognise that the people who receive the care are the ones who are the experts, and to listen to what they actually want and to deliver that, rather than using their knowledge and professional position to force things on people that they don't need. So I'd like to thank the council officers as well for being open to listening.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll add my thanks to all of you. Very, very interesting and very moving. My actual, it's not really a question, it's a request to add an item 5 on this recommendation, that list of recommendations we've got. And what our request would be is to invite all of you back in 12 months' time to actually tell us, have we done anything? Because we're all politicians here, and you will all know politicians are long on words, short on deeds. And this is a way of holding our feet to the fire. We will all, I'm sure, every single one is going to sign this. We're all going to be very much for you. But that's totally irrelevant unless we do something. So I would like to add, if it's possible, Madam Mayor, recommendation 5, that we invite you back minimum 12 months, maybe later or whatever, to give us feedback. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Blow, please.
Thank you. Again, this is not a question, but that was a very, very interesting presentation. And it's about adult social care and about not doing to you, but doing with you and taking recognition of what you want. I'm the lead member for Children's Services. Obviously, there's children's social care as well. So I think we need to go away. We are already trying to get the voices of children into our system for social care. And so I suppose this is my pledge to you that we will do what we can in the same spirit for children. Obviously slightly different, but still the same principles. And I think it's really, really important that it's about time we had some change where we listen to people and observe their needs. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrew, quickly, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to everybody who's spoken this evening. Greg, you might remember that we had the opportunity quite recently to talk about this new charter. And two of the points that I made were that the goal must be to move from surviving to thriving. I also pointed out that there are very strong analogies here between our corporate parenting responsibilities as all councillors to the responsibilities that we have to all of our residents who need support. I would like to ask that you and others and our officers and all our councillors consider very, very carefully about how we will empower you to ensure that this is not simply a paper document, but that this leads to meaningful changes and improvements in the life of all. So do you, because you need to hold our feet to the fire. If you have any ideas about suggestions as to how we might, we support you to do that, I think we'd be very, very interested. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand Councillor David Hare is proposing the report. Is that correct, David? Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
That's me, Madam Mayor, Councillor Cummington.
Thank you, Cunningham. We're not going to make any speeches, but David, can you both now note that that suggestion is added into the report made by Councillor Baker that we invite people back? David, would you?
That was something that we were thinking of doing anyway, because we want every year to have people come and say how things are going. This isn't a 1 year or a 2 year or even a 5 year thing. This is for eternity. This is something that we've got to go on getting better at. We can't afford to do an awful lot of things now, but hopefully we can start. And starting, we can get better and better. And that's what we want to do for all the people who we work with.
David, did you want to say anything else in favour of the report? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm quite emotional now because this is something that I've worked for and believed in for 40 odd years. And I wholeheartedly believe in this vision, the vision that we've just seen for Social Care Futures. It's something that is very, very close to my heart. It's about making sure that everyone is respected, valued, listened to and understood. It's about working together, not an us and them situation, but working together so that we work for the best of everyone. It's about removing the special from services and trying to embrace the glorious ordinary for everyone. I've got 1 or 2 quotes. They were in that video that we saw, but I say I've unashamedly had some quotes from SCF website because they're what we want. We all want to live in the place we call home, with the people and things we love, in communities where we look out for one another, doing the things that matter to us. And the SCF website says to achieve our vision, social care needs to be reimagined, redesigned, and properly resourced. And perhaps that's the hardest thing, but we will go forward. If we fail to do so, many more people will face a future where, should they need to draw on care or support to live their lives, they risk losing control and contact with the people and things that make their lives worthwhile.
without big changes to the way we think about social care, we and the people we care about face losing control. Embracing social care futures is but a start. As we all know, we don't have an awful lot of money or resources to all we want to do. But if we can start to think differently, to act with decency and inclusion to everyone, we can start to make a difference, including all people in plans, ideas and vision, so that we can truly be an inclusive area. And I just ask that everyone, and I believe everyone will, back this motion and start to move forward so that we give their perspective, helping everyone to see the way forward together.
Thank you, David. Does any member wish to speak against the report? Is that a hand in the air at the back, or are you scratching your head? Thank you. We now move to a vote on this item. All those in favour of the recommendation as set out in the report on page 53, please raise your hands. I think without counting, we can say that's clearly unanimous. And can I take this opportunity to thank those of you who have spoken to the council tonight? It's quite daunting, even for us as elected members, to speak at council, and you've done it wonderfully. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and your presentation, and we'll do it right by you. Thank you. That recommendation is carried. I'd like to draw members' attention to the charter which has been signed by myself, the Deputy Mayor, the lead member and the group leaders, Councillors Adrian Mather, Stephen Canway, Pauline Jorgensen, Andy Croy and David Hare. A large version of the charter you can see up there. There was a QR code on the last presentation which enables you to sign it. You know what to do with the QR code. If you don't, we'll perhaps have to do it the old-fashioned way. That concludes that item, and I'll give members time to leave if they want to before we move on to the less interesting stuff.
That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Alan's great.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great. It came to the Health and Wellbeing Board and they were brilliant, man. I love it. Absolutely, really moving, really fantastic. Yes, thank you. My throat's a lot better. Thank you.
Jake's total chatterbox. When I went to open the Loddon home, he was just cracking jokes and all sorts. He was the lead person taking people around.
Oh, brilliant.
He was fantastic.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant.
I hope you all heard that. Jake's fantastic. Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to change the tone now and go on to the council tax base. I understand, sorry, Pauline. I understand Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay is proposing that report. Is that right, Imogen?
It is indeed, when everybody comes back.
Thank you. And do you have a seconder?
Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
I shall begin. Right. Okay. 96 council tax base. Those of you that...
Imogen, can you sit for a moment, please?
Oh, sitting down, sitting down.
Madam Mayor, may we consider the three recommendations separately, please?
To the council tax base? Yes.
Indeed.
Okay.
Imogen.
Okay then. Right. Those of you who serve on town and parish councils will understand how important this report is. It sets out the expected baseline value of the council tax that our Woking Borough Council and our town parish councils receive next year. The council tax base is the total number of Band D property equivalent dwellings. It is not the number of properties, but Band D is used as the average. So we have 74,003 taxable properties in the Woking Borough Council area, which averages out to an equivalent of 77,033.7 Band D properties for 24-25. This report also includes 2 government initiatives, which I'm hoping to support. Change the council tax to change the council tax for long-term empty properties and second homes. We want to encourage property owners to bring empty homes back into use, and currently council tax doubles once property is left unoccupied and unfurnished for 2 years. We are looking to change this so that the extra council tax is charged once a property has been left unoccupied for 1 year. Council needs to remember there are exemptions to this, such as if someone or a care home, in prison, serving in the armed forces, or if the home is in probate after somebody has died or being extensively rebuilt, amongst others. We also currently want doubling the council tax on second homes after 2 years, but if the council agrees, this will now be reduced to 1 year. The amount of income these changes are expected to generate is in the tables in this report. That's the end of it. Thank you.
Councillor Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I take issues with points 2 and 3. I'm worried about the unintended consequences on the vulnerable and also the lack of detail in the paper on exemptions. I don't understand reading this paper what exemptions there may be, so I can't know if the rules affect them or not. When it comes to properties empty for a year, I'm concerned about it's going to affect those who are grieving or suffering economic abuse. I think of my own ward where a parent has passed away, it's gone over to a son or daughter who live elsewhere. They work full time, they've got children, they come down as often as possible, but with siblings disagreeing on things, sifting through sometimes 50 years of sentimental items, a year can come across very quickly. So they already pay council tax for services, so why would we heap on the pressure? Then there's relationship breakdown and domestic abuse, where one partner won't agree to sell. It's a form of economic abuse, forcing one partner to sign over the property to another. It's all about getting someone into debt. Adding on an extra 100% council tax could financially break them. The paper makes no consideration for these cases. It's simply a broad brushstroke to try to get as much tax as possible. The paper even says that there are exemptions so that income may be significantly less. So how can we rely on these figures, and what are the exemptions? The purpose of the Levelling Up Bill was to help communities that have a high number of second homes for breaks and holiday lets. And Woking Borough just doesn't fit this criteria. According to the figures in the paper, fewer than 0.4% of houses in a borough could be impacted by the changes. That's very different to 10% in some places, Cornwall and Wales. And of course, that's fewer than 0.4%, not counting the exemptions. I understand the keenness to encourage empty properties back onto the market, but 1 year is not long and could potentially lead to unfair double charging of people who are grieving and vulnerable. And when it comes to properties occupied periodically, what does that cover exactly? A resident should be able to read this paper and understand if they're exempt or not. For example, does it cover those who work abroad periodically or visit relatives for months at a time? I can't vote on something when it's not clear who it affects. The purpose of the bill was to tackle holiday homes, not exploit the change to get as much tax as possible. So with the lack of detail in this paper, especially on exemptions, and the concern that there are going to be unintended consequences on the bereaved and vulnerable, who are largely voiceless and unthought about, I cannot vote this through.
Councillor Harper, please.
Madam Mayor, the government introduced a legislation to allow authorities to increase council tax on second homes to address a specific issue in some communities. In many picturesque seaside towns and rural villages, the number of second homes, which remain empty for most of the year, has driven up house prices and impacted local people's ability to buy a property. Much as we all love Wokingham, it simply doesn't fall into the same category as Padstow or the Lake District, where second homes are a real problem. There are a small number of homes in Wokingham for which, whatever reason, are not the primary home of the resident. Perhaps they work abroad and return to Wokingham during breaks, or the house is used by family members when visiting relations who live in the borough. According to the figures in the report, we aren't just talking about grand mansions owned by the rich and famous. Over half the properties being targeted are in bands A to D, which are modest family homes. This tax burden is regressive on those who can least afford it. Council tax is levied to provide services to local residents. The owners of these homes will not get twice the services for their council tax. They're being forced to pay double what their neighbours pay for the same level of service. Surely this isn't fair or equitable. I also question how the council will enforce this new tax. Will they be relying on people to report on their neighbours if they believe they aren't permanently resident? Are they going to employ investigators to check on the status of properties in the area? The predicted revenue will soon be eaten up by enforcement costs. Madam Mayor, it's interesting to note the councils that have already implemented this additional tax. North East Somerset, East Devon, North Norfolk, all Lib Dem controlled councils. As soon as the Lib Dems have an opportunity to raise taxes, they jump at the chance. Here in Wokingham, the Liberal Democrats have doubled car parking charges, are planning a massive increase in on-street parking charges, and now want to double council tax for some of our residents. At the same time, they have slashed home to school transport, road maintenance budgets, and will halve the frequency of rubbish collection. This proposal shows that the Lib Dems remain the party of high taxation and poor services.
Thank you. We now move to a vote on this item, and I'm going to take. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I don't think you allowed me to give my speech as seconder, and it might be appropriate for me to do so. I didn't imagine I was going to need to, but clearly I do. I was very interested in the comments of Laura and Peter. They both made very good and eloquent speeches. What they seem to neglect is we are faced with a major housing crisis, and empty homes, to bring those into use so that people can actually live in those houses, seems entirely sensible. The government clearly thinks it's entirely sensible. The government has passed this legislation to enable it to happen. The exemptions are established by the government, and those exemptions answer the concerns that Laura was raising. She talked about grieving families. Grieving families will almost certainly be grieving, the property will be in probate. And that's one of the exemptions. This is a government initiative which we are applying in these circumstances because there is a housing crisis here. The exemptions protect all of these categories of people that you've expressed concerns about. So I hope members of council will support this perfectly reasonable item on the council tax base. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Imogen, you have a right of reply now.
No, I mean, Stephen did a good job of doing it, but it's basically, obviously I've outlined the exemptions. They're the same exemptions that we had before. Yeah, as Stephen says, if something is in probate, it would be exempt. If somebody's serving in the armed forces or having to go overseas for some reason, they are exempt. I honestly don't see, we've got a year in case, or if a property is being put up for sale, that would be exempt. We've got a year for them to decide what to do with the property. We want to bring as many homes back into use as possible, whether second homes or homes that are just standing empty. We've got a desperate shortage. Anybody who's dealing with housing matters will realise that a lot of particularly low-income people are struggling to find properties to rent at the moment. And anything we can do to help resolve that problem is, I think, a good thing.
Now we move to the vote. I'm going to take each of the 3 points separately as requested. So if you would like to vote on item 1, agree the proposed council tax base for the whole area and by parish as set out in the report. In favour, please. Thank you. Anyone against? Did anyone abstain? Don't think so. Thank you, that's carried. Item 2, agree an additional 100% council tax long-term empty home property premium from the 1st of April 2024 for long-term empty properties which have been empty and unfurnished for a period of 1 year. That is currently applied after 2 years. Can we have 4, please? And against? And abstentions? That's carried. And item 3, agree an additional premium of 100% for properties occupied periodically, second homes, which are unoccupied but furnished from the 1st of April 25. Can I have a show of hands for, please? And against? And abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Item 97 on our agenda, the council tax support scheme. Again, Imogen, I understand you're proposing this. Who's your seconder?
I am indeed. My seconder is Rachel Bishop-Firth.
Thank you, Rachel. Imogen, would you like to speak?
Of course, yes. Council tax. This is the report that agrees to financial assistance on a reduced council tax for people of working age and on low incomes in the Wokingham Borough Council area. We have to agree this annually, and this year we have added a growth amount of £100,000 to bring the scheme in line with the increases with the government's welfare payments. These have gone up by 6.7% this year, and we were in danger of having a few people in receipt of this benefit being pushed above the scheme threshold and becoming liable to paying higher percentage or even a full council tax. There was an extensive review of this scheme this year, and I want to thank the officers for their work for this. I wish we could cover more people, but we have such a significant budget pressures that we were limited in what we could add to the scheme without having some people worse off. But I'm glad we were able to extend the scheme by £100,000. It is important to note that to be eligible for this benefit are items such as benefit items such as the armed forces payments, disability and care allowances, and child benefit and child maintenance are not included in your income calculation. The report also states that we have made over 70 emergency payments this year from our hardship fund to those who need it, those in the most need. And it links heavily into our tackling poverty strategy, but I will let my seconder, Rachel Bishop-Firth, talk about this. In general, I and everyone in this council, I hope, is willing to support the recommendations in this report.
Does anyone wish to speak against the report? Okay, we now move to the vote on this item. All those in favour of the recommendation as set out in the report on page 83, please raise your hands. Thank you very much, that's carried. We now move on to item 98, the Treasury Management Midterm Report. Imogen, is that you again?
I'm afraid it is, yes.
Do you have a seconder?
I do indeed. It's
Thank
Steve
you.
Newton.
Stephen.
Yes.
Thank you. Imogen, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. This report has already been presented to the executive back on November the 30th, 2023, and it is here to provide a retrospective update on the status of our investments and loans and the overall management of our treasury funds within the first 6 months of this year. It also allows us to check that we are meeting all of the requirements in our treasury management strategy, which was agreed by all members of this council in February 2023. The standout points that I will raise includes our net indebtedness. This is because we are using more of our internal funds instead of borrowing externally and having to pay high interest rates. At the moment, this is good as it helps with our funding pressures. We are confident that the cash balances we have can support this level of internal borrowing. The average interest rate on the council's external debt is forecast to be 3.68% across the year. This is expected to rise in the next financial year, and as current loans expire and require refinancing at the higher rates. The impact of this is being monitored. However, currently we estimate a current debt financing budget is sufficient. Current debt financing will be sufficient to absorb the impact. The Treasury investment returns are forecast to be 3 million over this year. That is an improvement from only 1.4 million we received last year. On page 94, you can see a list of the investments that the council has in place. It includes loans to 9 other councils, as well as other funds. Much of the money is used for this purpose and comes from the funds that are ring-fenced, such as the money we get from property developments for future infrastructure projects that have not yet started. On page 95, you can also see where we have borrowed money from, and all of which is at a much lower rate than you would get today. All in all, I think you can see we are managing our debt and keeping it much more under control and making our money work for the benefit of all our residents. And our external debt is certainly in a far better position than it was under the previous administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Imogen. Does any member wish to speak against the report? Thank you, Pauline. Can I give the seconder, please, Stephen, time to speak if he wants to?
Thank you. Can I reserve my right to speak later?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Conservative Group intend to abstain on this item. Imogen said in her speech that you could see clearly where we're lending money to and where we're borrowing from. However, I'm disappointed to see in the report that the local authorities are not documented. They're just called local authorities. I think in the interest of transparency, it would be nice to see exactly where we're borrowing money from and where we're lending it to, which Imogen said was in there, but doesn't seem to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, I'm looking at you to see if you want to speak now.
Yes, please, if there's.
Oh, sorry, I hadn't seen Andy. Andy.
Sorry, thank you, because Pauline said something. I was just wondering, for several years, we were told that the council had catastrophic levels of debt, and now we're told that we don't. And this is all just changed in a year, apparently. So I was wondering if Imogen could outline how that situation changed. Thank you.
You want me to answer it now? Essentially, we've done a lot of reprofiling, and some certain projects have been shelved. So we're not needing to borrow as much money as we did. And it's been reprofiled into further years. So we've smoothed out, and some of the projects have become less ambitious. And we had to do that in order to manage our debt, as previously outlined.
Imogen, can I stop you, because you have a right to reply to the questions at the end?
Oh, what? Okay, fine, I'll stop now.
Yeah. Okay. Stephen, you now have the opportunity to speak if you wish to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To answer Pauline's question, this is where format has been used in previous years. The role of the Treasury function is to manage the ebbs and flows of the council's cash from the various revenue streams and grants to match the timings of its outgoings. Interest rates started to rise at the end of 2021 and have gone from just 0.1% to 5.25% today. Inflation was at 0.5% in August 2021, and having hit 11.1% is now down to 4%. That would seem good were it not still double the government's target. The impact of this turmoil on our residents, local businesses, charities, schools and hospitals, etc., and indeed this council has been profound, and is anticipated to continue for some time yet. Thankfully for Wokingham's residents, our council is in good shape compared to many. And according to the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, as at last September, Woking's debt per resident was £18,756, Thurrock was £8,049, and closer to home, Reading 2,100 and West Berkshire 1,106. By comparison, Wokingham Council's debt per resident was £713, which is less than half of that of all types of local authority. Fortunately for our residents, this council ended the speculative investment in commercial property pursued by the previous administration. We have seen the impact of this elsewhere. Speaking of sound financial management, members will have noted in the report that Wokingham lends money based on 3 key criteria: security, liquidity, and yield. The certainty and ability to repay is paramount, not the pursuit of the highest possible return, which increases risk. May I remind members that inter-authority lending has been an established practice over many years. No local authority has ever defaulted on a loan to another local authority, and such loans have statutory protection. Our residents' money and the interest due is secure and will help protect us from the impact of high inflation. I hope that members will agree with me that the Council's Treasury function has indeed effectively managed the Council's debt and cash balances to support the funding of the delivery of the Council's key priorities, and join with me in thanking the team for their work, and I commend this report to the Council. Thank you.
Imogen, you're right to reply now.
I think my right to reply to Pauline in terms of why the local authorities are not listed. It's been that way for years and years and years. It was the same under the Conservatives. And I believe it's to do with the commercial sensitivity. It is rather unknown. It's rather unusual for it to be known that we've lent money to Woking, and it's only that information is only out there because of the level of scrutiny on Woking, not really else. But as far as I'm aware, they've always just been listed as local authority and commercially sensitive, I guess.
We're now going to move to the vote. Please can I have a show of hands in support of the report? And those against? And those abstaining? Thank you. The report is carried. We move on to the next item 99 on our agenda, which is polling places review. I understand Councillor Prue Bray is proposing the report. Is that right, Prue? Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. I would like to thank officers and the members of the cross-party working group who were involved in the review. And I'd ask you to note that a supplementary paper has been issued for this item. It doesn't change the proposals, but it helpfully ties the responses from the public consultation to the polling place that they are about. As well as taking those responses into account, we also had to look at the new ward boundaries resulting from the periodic electoral review and at the changes to parliamentary boundaries. I'm going to use the name of the town or village in explaining the changes rather than the council ward, because the changes to the wards makes it confusing otherwise. And if I don't mention your area, then nothing has changed. So in Woodley, Earley and Wokingham Town, the same polling places are being used, but with the addition of Woodley Airfield Community Centre. But there's some reconfiguration of who goes where to vote because of the changes to the wards. Parts of Finchampstead and Swallowfield will now vote at Arborfield Green Community Centre instead of a number of other places. And part of Arborfield, which has voted traditionally at Barkham Village Hall, will now vote at Arborfield Village Hall. In Shinfield Parish, some people from Spencer's Wood and 3 Mile Cross will be voting in School Green instead of Spencer's Wood. And the situation in Shinfield is complicated by having the new parliamentary constituency boundary running through the middle of it, which restricts what can be done. In Wargrave, people will go to Wargrave Pavilion instead of Hare Hatch Village Hall. And people in the south of Twyford will no longer have to go to Hurst Village Hall, but will vote at Stanlake Pavilion. Now, moving the Wokingham Without polling place from Oaklands Junior School to St Sebastian's Memorial Hall provoked a high percentage of the consultation responses, both for and against. While the change is not without problems, we need to get the polling station out of the school. This has been an aim for years, and we are very pleased to have managed to do it at last. And finally, I would like to highlight there is more work to do. Some of the town and parish internal and external boundaries need looking at as a result of large-scale development, changes to borough wards, And that means that people are not now always voting at the most convenient place. We need to get that sorted. Sorting these out requires something called a community governance review, which is in our own hands locally to do. We can't start it until after the next election, but I think it's worth flagging it up now so that people can start thinking about what they would like to see happen in their own area. Thank you.
Indicated that she wishes to speak against the report. Is there anyone else that wants to speak against it? Pauline, thank you.
Thank you. This is specifically about one of the places that Prue mentioned, the polling station moving from Oakland School in Woking Without. I've personally worked for several years with the schools, with their staff, their governors, their parents and our officers to have the polling stations moved from the school. There are already 2 bank holidays in May, and a third closure in 3 years out of 4 was a severe disruption to the education of over 400 children, with 3 schools on the site all having to close because of safeguarding. In this survey, only 51% favoured moving to the St Sebastian's Memorial Hall, which is the new proposal, but the vast majority of those opposed expressed 2 very real reasons and problems why they were opposed. Firstly, the lack of car parking on that space, and secondly, the busy road on which it lies, 9 Mile Ride. I've also had those misgivings, but I have received assurances from our officers that they will increase the number of car parking spaces on the land that the parish council actually already owns, and they are assessing the viability of putting in place a temporary pedestrian crossing and additional signage, and ensuring that additional staff are there on polling day to help with parking and a safe access. And they are already working with our parish council on these issues. There is no ideal place in the ward, and we've looked at many different places. But the reason I'm speaking is that I would like to put on record that in order to vote for this, then the problems with the site must be addressed before May. And I do thank the officers for the work that they're already doing on this. And in that context, I shall happily be voting for and supporting this item, which I've personally worked so hard over several years to achieve. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Pauline. Stephen, I'm sorry, I should have given you the opportunity first. Do you want to speak now?
I think I will. I listened with interest to Pauline. I thought when she started off, she was going to be voting against, but at the end, she managed to persuade herself to vote for, which is wonderful. It means that none of us need to persuade her. She's persuaded herself. I think I'll just take this opportunity, if I may, to express my particular pleasure at one aspect of the changes, and that's that voters in South Twyford will now, as in the past, be able to vote at Stanlake Pavilion rather than have to go into Hurst. I think that is a very good move, and I really welcome it very much. I'll leave it to the proposer of the proposer of this item to wrap up this discussion.
Prue, you have your right to reply.
Thank you. I was slightly bemused by Pauline, but I'm very pleased. I know that she has supported the move out of the school. It is as important to get polling stations out of schools where we can, particularly this one, because it has meant the closure of the site, and it's no good, and the school don't want it there. We will do, and Andrew's provided a list of the mitigations that are going to take place, which Pauline referred to. So we will do some work on that. It is important to note that this isn't perfect. So we have quite a large swathe of people in a new development in Arborfield who are still having to go to vote at Barkham Village Hall down a single track road. And that's because we can't split that polling district in Barkham in time for this election. It's impossible to do it. Ideally, we'd be sending people who live in the older part of Barkham to Barkham Village Hall, and the other people who live much closer to the Arborfield Garrison site there. But we can't do it. Technically, it's not possible. There's issues around when we can do it. We have to really wait for the general election to be over, because we don't want to do anything with polling places and be stuck in the middle of having a general election when we haven't quite got it sorted out. So after we've got through the general election, we will be looking at the sort of anomalies and small things, the redividing of the parishes internally to make more sense. And there are some bits which have been created by the rewarding where there's awkward boundaries now, and we need to consult with the parishes and get them to talk to us about what they would like to see. So there is more work to do, but it's within our own hands. We don't have to go to any external bodies. We should be able to organise it locally. So that will be a piece of work that I'll hopefully start in the next municipal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Prue. We now move to the vote. Would members like to agree the recommendations as set out in the report? Please, those for. Against? Abstaining? Thank you, that's carried. The next item on the agenda is item 100, the timetable of meetings for 24-25. I understand Stephen Conway's proposed in the report. Stephen, do you have a seconder? Thank you, Prue. Stephen, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I'm going to need to detain anyone for very long on this. I think this has been shared with the different political groups on the council prior to the meeting. No objections have been raised, so I'm assuming everyone is happy with this. So I don't propose to say anything further.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the report? That's good, thank you. We can move straight to the vote then. Can we have a vote, please, for? Looks pretty unanimous to me. Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Item 101 on the agenda, Ruscombe Neighbourhood Plan. Lindsay, I understand that you're presenting that report. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Stephen. Lindsay, would you like to speak?
I'm very pleased this evening to present this item, as this is the third such neighbourhood plan that has progressed to this stage during the council year. In this case, it is the Ruscombe Neighbourhood Plan which successfully progressed following its referendum vote held on December the 7th last. There was a turnout of 29% with a 96% yes vote. This shows that this neighbourhood plan has considerable support in Ruscombe. I should like to thank all those involved in producing the neighbourhood plan, especially members of the Ruscombe Parish Council and those residents who assisted in the progress of this plan. I recommend the actions proposed under this agenda item to support the adoption of the Ruscombe Neighbourhood Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Lindsay, does anyone wish to speak against the report? Thank you, that's really nice. Can we move straight to the vote? Votes for, please. And against? Any abstentions? That item is carried. Thank you very much. We now move to member question time. We have a period of 30 minutes for member questions. I'd like to remind executive members that their response to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes. We have 5 questions from members. Councillor Keith Baker, please will you put your question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for the executive member for active travel, transport and highways, because you really haven't had any work tonight. Can I first, which is very rare for your role, I can tell you, can I first say thank you for providing free parking for the winter events held in Wokingham and Woodley. The Wokingham event required the closure of several roads in order to provide space for stalls and rides. Clearly, closure of these roads required advertising and time commitment from officers in carrying out the legal process to close these roads. What was the total cost of these highways actions, and who paid for these costs, the Borough Council or Wokingham Town Council?
Thank you, Keith, for your question. Established events such as the Winter Carnival in Wokingham and Woodley require temporary traffic restrictions and are for the benefit of the community or charities, and have been included in a permanent traffic regulation order for over 10 years. This allows the required restrictions to be enacted when required and further advertisement or legal costs. This saves planned regular event organisers significant costs that can be focused on key events and traffic management. Whilst there is an officer time outlay to enact the restrictions and assess the event plans, this is generally minimal because of the positive relationship maintained with the event organisers. With such events, the checking of the details can equate to approximately 1 hour of officer time.
I certainly have. Thank you very much for that information, and I'm very pleased that Wokingham Town Council benefits from, in essence, the costs of the order from 10 years ago. Unfortunately, in Woodley, it's not the case. Historically, the charge for removing or temporarily suspending the 8, I think it is, disabled car parks in the middle of the precept has always been waived, never any cost. This year, the WBC decided or tried to charge £686 for doing it. After a lot of toing and froing, that was waived, but they were told in no uncertain terms that next year they will have to pay the £686. This isn't Woodley Town Council, it's the Town Centre Partnership will have to pay that. And I think that is unfair. So can I ask you, as the executive member responsible, to take that away and give Woodley Town the same benefit that Wokingham Town has for all the reasons that you mentioned about the benefits of Wokingham Town. They're the same in Woodley Town.
The benefits that Wokingham have had for the last 10 years, you were actually the executive member for highways when all of that was put together, and none of that has changed at all. During some period before this administration took over, a new change was made for Woodley to charge for suspension of those bays. In the winter of 2022, I got that waived. And for this year, 2023, it came from the Economic Development Fund, the 600 odd pounds that you mentioned. This authority does not have a bottomless pit of money, and we would need to work on how that would be funded for 2024.
In October, as part of an interview with the executive member for finance, the Bracknell News said that the council needed to find savings or extra income of £15 million for its budget next year. In Wokingham Today, she gave the figures of 11.7 million and 13.1 million, totalling 24.8 million. Yet the MTFP reports presented to Community and Corporate ONS are, as recently as December, say the council needs to find 20 million over 3 years. Which of these figures is correct?
Thank you, Jackie, for your question. The answer is that all of the figures you mentioned are correct, but relate to different years and different points in time. million is the savings target that was agreed for the 23-24 budget. The 15 million, or more precisely 15.5 million pounds, is the total savings challenge for the year 24-25, as reported to community and corporate overview and scrutiny since the end of September. The latest paper dispatched to corporate and community overview and scrutiny this week now states 17.3 million for 24-25. So you can clearly see that the future savings targets do change and will continue to do so as long as we live in a world where much of the future is unknown. If we take the year 23-24, it had a savings budget of 11.7 million, and add the full savings challenge of 17.3 million for the 24-25, we actually have 2 years total of 29 million pounds to find. However, some of this will need to be met from our initially from our reserves. The overview and scrutiny report goes on to further show a further 7.3 savings needed for the year 25-26, making the staggering 36.3 million savings challenge for the whole 3 years between 2023 to 2026. As the future is not cast in stone and we cannot predict every single event that might affect us, it is still an educated guess that we can plan against, and I expect these future numbers to fluctuate. However, these required savings are huge increases on any previous savings requirement levels that reflect in previous years that are reflected the extreme financial challenge this council has faced since 2023. This is the key issue that this council should be focused on, not the marginal movements in the calculations, as the stark overall financial situation faced by this council and many others does not change.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Despite what the Executive Member for Finance said in Wokingham today, the Council's core spending power is increasing by 12.4 million, 7%, which is more than any other Berkshire authority and more than the average for England. Will she now admit that she has more money to work with than previous Conservative administrations who managed to balance the books and invest in services where she can't?
Wow, I'm afraid that's rather a ridiculous situation. The core funding has gone up by 7%, I will agree, but that amounts to £667,000. We have to find 17.3 million next year. The £667,000, like a drop in the ocean. It's a ridiculous statement to say that we've got more than we've had in previous years.
Shahid, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure. It's regarding the female-only swimming sessions. Why was 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Tuesdays and Wednesdays during term time only chosen by Woking Borough Council as a time to offer women's only swimming sessions?
Thank you for your question, Shahid. I think we have an additional microphone still over there, causing a bit of an echo.
Sorry. Oh, I beg pardon.
Thank you. I'm assuming that you're referring to Forest School, and I'm sure you will appreciate that the school must consider their own curriculum and their safeguarding procedures in offering women-only swimming. Furthermore, this school provides a swimming facility for 9 local primary schools, as well as local swim schools. I understand that it's not financially viable to maintain and manage this pool outside of term time, and it's therefore not a Woking Borough Council decision as to the availability of this pool. We have, however, managed to get an agreement with the school to provide women-only swimming at the times you reference in your question, and we are also in discussion for the potential to enhance the offering. But this is dependent on availability and having a community group that can be found to utilise a session in line with the school policies.
Thank you for the response. I suppose 8 and 9, it doesn't take much ingenuity to conclude that the response from the female is going to be very minimum, because that's the most busiest time when they're doing the school rounds. Also, as a councillor who actually initiated this 2 years ago to relaunch this session nor the females who are likely to be impacted. Why weren't we consulted on this before the program was launched?
I said that we are looking to continue to work with the school for additional times because we are aware that 8 till 9 is not an ideal time. But none of this would have been necessary had your administration not terminated existing established women-only swimming at Bulmesh Pool before moving it and relocating it and rebuilding it in a way in which women-only swimming would never be possible again. And this is yet another example of an area of running the council where we are having to try and rescue something from the shambles that your administration left behind.
Laura, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's anxiety among local charities and residents about Woking Borough Council's plan to stop funding the One Front Door service this summer. The funding pays for Citizens Advice Wokingham staff and services to help residents who find themselves in financial difficulty. The service costs £90,000 a year to run, and the council ring-fenced £250,000 a year ago to support financial hardship projects, of which not a penny is planned to help continue One Front Door. With the administration not supporting the service, who will be helping these struggling residents?
Thank you for your question, Laura. Wokingham Borough Council is absolutely committed to ensuring our residents have sources of help and support, and Citizens Advice will continue to be an important part of this. We are still providing funding for the core service so they can support residents on issues including benefits, debt, employment and housing, as well as family and legal issues. One Front Door was set up to provide a triage service to deal with a huge additional surge in calls for help during the COVID pandemic. It has provided a valuable service to residents, and this executive extended funding into 2024 because of the cost of living crisis. It was created as a temporary enhancement to the normal course Citizens Advice service. You yourself, Laura, in your previous role as Executive Member for Anti-Poverty, signed off the strategic direction for One Front Door to transition to a longer-term sustainable arrangement. I'm not clear why you now oppose this. The £250,000 hardship fund is a Liberal Democrat initiative. It is dedicated to a number of projects which will provide longer-term benefits to our residents by fighting the root causes of poverty. This includes boosting access to a full education through poverty proofing the school day, and by funding a community pantry which will help residents on low incomes afford affordable healthy food. You were included, Laura, on the cross-party consultation on the use of this money, and you spoke in this chamber opposing its use to support residents in need. This executive will continue to support the Citizens Advice service, will provide other sources of help and advice for our residents, and will work to fight the root causes of poverty. One Front Door was funded by central government grants, which the Conservative government has unfortunately ended. As a financially responsible executive, we have to move forward with sustainable ways to support residents. We're working as a council with the Citizens Advice and with other members of the voluntary and community sector to achieve this. This includes improving our processes for signposting and referrals and a partnership with Boom Credit Union to support residents with finances.
Laura, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. I do. I think you'll agree that we had hoped that demand would have fallen for the service after COVID, after cost of living, and unfortunately, the demand is just at the same level. It is not decreasing. And so with the service closing, with it being embedded in local charities across this borough, more vulnerable people won't get the support they need. So I do hope you'll go away and seriously have a look at this to help avoid disaster for a number of residents, especially as so much of the £250,000 still hasn't been spent. I didn't speak against it helping people in need. That is a matter of record. My question is, will you let charities know before the end of this month what is going to replace One Front Door? And I don't mean the name of it. I mean, how is it actually going to work? Nuts and bolts. What is the infrastructure? Because at the moment, they do not know, and they're very worried about people falling through the cracks.
Thank you for your question, Laura. I agree with you that it is very sad the number of people who are in desperate need is continuing to be at a very high level due to the extreme economic turbulence that we're seeing in this country. The officers are talking to the Hardship Alliance and to the Citizens Advice Bureau. They're going through the process of transitioning the service, and they will keep them fully informed. I need to stress that Citizens Advice Wokingham is not stopping the services that they provide in this area. What will be ending in the summer is the temporary triage service. So all of the core services are going to continue. So the welfare benefits, the money and debt, the employment, the housing, the advice in all of these areas will be continuing. I need to stress as well that Citizens Advice is just one way that residents can get help with the cost of living support. The council has an extensive cost of living support hub and community directory. Both were refreshed and relaunched in autumn 2022, and these are helping residents get immediate online help and support. Just to give an example of how successful this is, there have been more than 78,000 visits to the council's cost of living help website. 1 in 4 of every of those visits, so that's 18,000 in total, ends in a successful signpost to support. This is thanks to a campaign to raise awareness of this. We've had 42 partner campaigns, and the site has been added to 700 referral points with local partners. We put leaflets through doors for residents to signpost them to help. There's been ongoing comms and campaigning, online adverts, social media posts, emails to those most likely to be affected. There have been 3 cost of living surveys. Super, thank you very much.
Councillor Charles Margetts, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to raise a question about future parking provision in the Arborfield Garrison development, in particular in the area around the sports facilities. Residents have shown me figures that before the development started, there were 232 off-road car parking spaces. The current plan has 66 being maintained after development. The lack of parking could see gridlock in the area and visitors using the sports facilities parking over neighbouring roads rather than off-road car parks. Will the executive member commit to meet me and the members of the Arborfield community who've raised this with me to develop a plan to resolve this issue before it becomes a problem?
Thank you, Charles, for your question. As you're aware, the current proposal for improved sports provision, including parking in Arborfield, is currently being assessed by the local planning authority. Officers are aware of both local residents and the local club concerns, and these will be considered as part of the determination process. Clearly, parking is a key consideration for any enhanced facilities, and I understand officers are meeting with local stakeholders to listen to their concerns and help inform them of their assessment. I would also be happy to meet with local members and the local community to discuss these issues.
Charles, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for agreeing to meet with the local people involved. The particular concern is the car park around the sports pavilion where 26 spaces are currently allowed. Now, the initial response that got from officers when this was pressed with them was this is above the 20 per pitch guidance of the council, which is correct for the one cricket pitch that is there, but not for the 4 football pitches for the rest of the year, which we'll see with a football club with close to 200 playing members and around 7 games every Saturday could see significant problems. So I welcome your comment, basically, and I will encourage them to arrange that meeting, basically ASAP, and would just ask that if officers come back with this kind of response that it just isn't going to work, that there is some intervention to make sure that a problem is avoided before it starts.
What I can say is I met Crest before Christmas and I asked for meetings to be set up so that local members and officers could discuss the issues with Crest that need to be done. And we're looking at putting a meeting together on the 31st of January prior to the community liaison group. And that will give all parties an opportunity to discuss. I think, Rebecca, you should have had an email, I believe, on the 31st, or if not, it should be coming.
Thank you. The last question is from Councillor Andrew Gray. Andrew, will you put your question, please?
Thank you. Earlier in the year, it's confirmed that the leaving care allowance is being increased from £2,000 to £3,000. Can the executive member for Children's Services clarify how care leavers receive the £3,000 they're entitled to?
Thank you for your question, and apologies, I've got my back to you, but I've got to speak into the microphone. How care leavers receive the allowance really depends on what's appropriate for the individual concerned. So as a corporate parent, our main priority is to assist our care experienced young people to become fully independent before they turn 25, when our formal duty ends. And care leavers with former relevant status have an allocated personal advisor, also known as a PA, who work with them from the age of 16 up to age 25. As a corporate parent, a key offer and duty is preparing and supporting our care leavers when they move to their own tenancy. And this includes the offer of a setting up home allowance, the SUHA, which are funds up to the value of £3,000. And this we increased it from £2,000 in 2023. Care leavers can use this money for specific items at any time following a move. However, the main function is to help care leavers set up their home when moving into their first independent accommodation. This can be to purchase essential items. Essential items can include white goods, for example, a washing machine, kitchenware and furniture. The setting up home allowance may also be used to purchase flooring when they move into independent social housing. The setting up home allowance is a one-off allowance. How it is accessed will vary depending on the care leaver's support needs. This could include transferring the funds into the care leaver's bank account for them to administer and obtain the items they require. Or personal advisors can order items on behalf of the care leaver where they're not yet able to manage this independently or where they don't have access to payment methods. Young people can also buy necessary items as agreed with their PA, keep the receipts and be reimbursed.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for the response. You mentioned that the amount was up to the value of £3,000. In the letter from the Department for Education to the local authorities in March 2023, it was mentioned that it was the grant was a minimum of £3,000, which I think is an important distinction to make. Are you confident that all care leavers are getting the full entitlement of a minimum of £3,000?
That's not quite right, in that it's our discretion how much we give them. We make a policy decision ourselves. And I can't answer for each individual care leaver because each individual care leaver is different. So some people won't need that amount of money and some will. So it's not, I'm sure you wouldn't want to just to give them money which they didn't need either. So I'll have to look into that a bit more and give you more of a written answer. Maybe we can discuss it after this meeting, exactly what you would like to know. I'm sure we can arrange for that to be happening. But I wouldn't like you to think, and I don't think it would be true, to think that some care leavers are not getting the amount of money that they need to actually be able to set up their home.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have a period of 20 minutes for questions on committee meetings and ward matters. Please will you indicate if you wish to speak? Thank you. Steve Newton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. The bridge that spans the railway by Early Station is a vital link between my ward and Woodley, in addition to being used by many rail passengers. Some residents have told me that they've been advised that the Lib Dems are planning to close the bridge. I believe that we were seeking to repair the bridge, which is feasible and affordable, unlike the previous administration's proposal, so it can continue to be used for many years to come. This will presumably require a temporary closure whilst the work is carried out. What is the truth, please? Is it closing, or were people simply mischief-making and misleading residents? Can you also please provide an update on what is planned and the timescales which my residents can truly rely on? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for your question. The bridge has been assessed. The span across the A3290 is going to be just repaired. The ramps will be demolished and they will be replaced with a similar type of structure but made of steel. The council is currently exploring the detailed design options for a design and build contract that hopefully will be completed by 2024, and in 2025, 2026, subject to Network Rail possessions, the works will be undertaken. Of course, during that period, whilst those works are being undertaken, the bridge will be closed temporarily. On completion, the bridge will be reopened as it is at the present time, with ramps, and which is a stepped ramp, and the span across the A3290.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for Councillor Shenton. April 23, I contacted you over two byways in my ward, looking at the names now, Tintagel Road and, gosh, where's the other one? Range Road, that's it. And you sent me a long and detailed response saying that work would be carried out there, which it was, and that would use up basically pretty much all of the capital funding that was then available. And you said at the time, ultimately it will be a corporate decision on whether there will be another bid for future work for byways. My question was simply this: I was contacted literally this morning by two of the residents on Range Road who said that the recent bad weather has caused the repair work to deteriorate, and I was just looking for some guidance on whether a budget is in place or what kind of response I should be giving in terms of repairs, etc., etc. Thank you.
We've not entirely finalised things for next year, but it doesn't at this point look optimistic that there will be a budget for, to do what we have previously been doing on such as Tintagel. It's not for want of my trying. I would rather like to have one, but for this moment in time, I can't promise you anything.
Hi, this is a question for the Leader of the Council. I'm continuing to receive reports of poor performance and bad management of management agents of estates and blocks of flats, especially within Montague Park. What movement has the Council made with regards to flat management and estate management companies?
Thank you very much for your question, Pete. The Council, as I think I've reported in the past, has been trying to explore ways in which we can use our own local plan policies, emerging local plan policies, to try and address this issue. But it is in truth a national issue. I know it's affecting residents in Montague Park, but it's affecting leaseholders across Wokingham and across the country. So I think it's properly addressed, or most likely to be most effectively addressed, by changes in national legislation. And I recall reporting in a previous council meeting on helpful responses from, or a helpful response from Theresa May MP. I've recently had a very constructive meeting with Matt Rodder, the MP for Reading East, which was facilitated, and I'm grateful for this, by the leader of the Labour group. That was a really interesting conversation. It was a face-to-face meeting, and it gave me some insights into the kind of legislative changes that may be in the offing, either through the current legislation that's making its way through parliamentary processes, or more likely in some more wide-ranging measures introduced by a new administration after the general election. So we continue to raise this issue with the borough's MPs, and we're continuing to try and ensure that we lobby for changes that will benefit leaseholders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Shenton, my question relates to the minutes of overview and scrutiny management on November the 15th, because this is the full council since they were published. Item 50, where we looked at proposals for change to waste collection, refers to super recyclers, those who create very little landfill waste and who could possibly share a wheelie bin with a like-minded, keen recycling neighbour. This idea is very attractive to some residents in my ward who are very concerned about where they put a wheelie bin because they don't have a garden with side access, they don't have a garage, they could share with a neighbour. The minutes record that officers will look at the collection of redundant bins, i.e. for those who happily would share one. I would like to ask why couldn't we, ask residents to apply if they want to share a bin, and this would avoid the cost to the council of delivering and then returning to collect an unwanted, unneeded bin. Has this been looked at?
I've certainly raised that as a question with officers. That is an approach that we should have a quick look at, actually, rather than collecting after the event. But there is one caveat. If a property changes hands and the incoming resident finds there is no bin, because we have to think of what that might entail as well.
My question is for the executive for active travel, transport and highways. When will Lenham Close get the double yellow so they can more safely exit onto Old Forest Road?
Thank you, Rochelle, for your question. Today, I signed off the IEMD Amendment 1, which included 4 roads within Winnersh. The next stage is for the legal order to be sealed, and then the order will be placed with the contractor to undertake the works. These are anticipated to be completed by the end of March 2024 for the yellow lines and, where appropriately, any particular signs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is also to the Executive Member for Highways. Apologies, I've got my back to you, Paul. On Woodlands Avenue, there's a service road called Port Close, and the garages, the green area, the street lights, they all belong to Reading Borough Council. And one of the street lights hasn't worked for a very long time. A lot of the garages are not being let out and they're in a state of disrepair. The green area, the barriers being broken down, there's cars parking all over it. Woking Borough Council officers have done as much as they can. So please, could you help if I send you more details to get in touch with your counterpart at Reading Borough Council to try to get it sorted once and for all?
Thank you, Laura, for your question and raising those issues. Yes, please send me the details and I will speak to my counterpart at Reading Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This question is for the Executive Member for Active Travel, etc. Some months ago, you gave an answer to a resident's question about a pedestrian crossing of Biggs Lane to assist with children attending the recently built Farley Hill Primary School in Barkham. Your answer was that no crossing was justified given the current volume of traffic and lack of pedestrians. This answer ignored the fact that this school is largely currently populated by pupils from distant locations who travel by car since relocation from Farley Hill Hamlet, but which is in the process of being enlarged to triple the numbers of pupils who will in future come from the northern part of Arborfield Green, the immediate surrounding area. A more recent study has been undertaken, and this still does not recognise the changes in pupil numbers that are underway. The cost of providing a signal-controlled crossing of Biggs Lane for the primary age school children attending Farley Hill Primary School is somewhere between £100,000 and £120,000. Barkham Parish Council has considered the use of a lollipop person, but that would mean a permanent raise of the parish precept. It is likely to be Barkham Parish Council SIL fund that will pay for this signal-controlled crossing. Given this, could I ask you to please look at moving this matter forward to the next stage?
Thank you, Ian, for your question. Yes, Biggs Lane, an assessment actually has been undertaken, and it is noted that the school is not full. The numbers of children will expand as each year goes by. I think they're up to year 3 at the moment. So there's additional 2 years still to come in, and that will increase the number of students crossing the road with parents. With that increasing number, it's going to be on the priority list to undertake work on site. However, the funding is likely not to reach that with using Borough Council funding. So SIL money would be welcome, and that will actually allow this to actually go in much quicker than it would normally do so. So I will take this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Highways. I have a resident who lives in Charvel and both his children go to the local Charvel Piggott Primary School. He has brought to my attention that the flashing 20-mile-per-hour sign outside the primary school has stopped working. The resident has written twice to the council and this still hasn't been fixed. I've also been chasing this up for months. The traffic on this road is increasing, and since the road was resurfaced, the speed bumps there have actually been less effective. Last month, I was shown a dash cam footage of a high-speed dangerous driver doing an illegal opposite lane overtake on this very road. Can I please request the flashing 20-mile-per-hour sign is fixed and new speed bumps are installed before an accident occurs or worse? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'll certainly look into getting the advisory 20-mile-an-hour flashing signs fixed. I don't know why they haven't been fixed. It hasn't been brought to my attention. I will look into the speed data that we have because we use GIS systems, so we can pick it up at any particular time and see if it is speed compliant before we take it forward with anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Planning. In the light of the recent news that a landowner has entered into a promotion agreement to bring forward a residential scheme for up to 500 new homes on a 95-acre parcel of land in Spencer's Wood, I would like to ask the Executive Member if we can rely on the AWE Bergfield Detailed Emergency Planning Zone as grounds for planning permission being refused for this or other developments within the zone.
Thank you, Catherine. You'll be aware I can't talk about an individual planning application, but what I can report is that the planning appeal that was in Burfield, there was a High Court challenge, and that High Court has now approved consent order to squash the allowed appeal at Holly's at the Hollies, Reading Road, Burfield Common. The matter is now passed back to the planning inspectorate, who will appoint a new inspector who will hold a new public inquiry. So that means that the original proposal, if people aren't aware, there have been two planning appeals in the DPZ area, one which was in Wokingham, which was 49 social housing, which went through on appeal, but we lost that, and the AWE didn't do too much at that particular occasion. But on this occasion, for the one in Burfield Common, the AWE put up a big defence against it, and it still went on appeal. And they have now taken it to court, and I've just given you the High Court response. So it sounds like there's the AWE are taking the DPZ much more seriously than they did about 12 months ago.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the member of Highways and Active Travel. It's regarding the recent flooding, which is obviously we all know taking place, but particularly in my ward, I have a number of residents complaining about this, and I'll then just a few of the roads which are highlighted. Delamere Road in my Whitesgate, houses actually got flooded because of the blockage of drain. Byron Road, again in Whitesgate, London Bridge Road, where in front of the dental, actually there was such a big lake where people had to wear some large shoes, go to the dental practice. And another issue which is also been highlighted is the end of Culver Lane as well. This is a bit tricky one. Actually, this was caused some injuries recently as well because of the ice. Some few people ended up in hospital. This is a bit trickier one, I say, is because where you may need to actually need some help from the Reading Borough Council as well, because it's right on the border, this is a long-standing issue. Whenever there's a rain, actually floods and it causes havoc, because that's the only way you can go across, right? My general question is, what is our Woking Borough Council's drainage cleaning strategy, and how often are they cleaned?
Thank you for your question. Yes, there was an awful lot of rain after one of the wettest Decembers that we've had for a long, long time. And there was some flooding that occurred. And of course, some of our drainage systems go into the local river known as the Loddon. When that backs up, then some of our drainage doesn't work as efficiently as what it would normally do. Reference to Culver Lane, there is a issue with the drainage under that bridge. That is currently an ongoing repair that the team are looking at. They hope to get it completed by the end of March. There are some other higher priorities in front of that where houses are at risk of flooding, which is the ones they're currently working on. What I've arranged through officers is during the winter period under Culver Lane, it's on the secondary salting route, so it doesn't get it done every night. It only gets done when there's severe weather around. That will be pre-salted at the same time as the primary route network. So that will protect that particular road. And that has happened since last Saturday. Reference to gully cleansing, it depends on what particular road you're on, the number of times they're cleansed, and some locations are more vulnerable than others in collecting debris. We do have some of our gullies which have got sensors in them, and when that sensor indicates it needs cleaning, that's when it will be cleaned. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And another one for you, Council officials, I'm afraid. Parents, head teachers, governors, Pauline Haley-Simons and myself, as ward members, have all been working to address the serious risks to pupils as a result of traffic drop-off and pick-up for Oakland School and Ellis Road entrance in Crowthorne. And I'm grateful to your recent response to my email regarding approval of the TRO to add further lines, which I believe has been approved today, or I hope it has. But as I requested in that email, will you commit to urgently meet with myself and the school leadership at one of these times to see the chaos for yourself? Because those familiar with the matter do not believe these proposed changes alone will bring the situation to a satisfactory resolution.
Thanks for your question. I wanted to make sure and not step ahead of myself by agreeing to meet you until such time that I'd signed off the IEMD. Okay, so I hope you understand that. Now that's been signed off, I've made that decision. I'm quite happy to come out and meet with you and other ward members and whatever parents or governors of the school or head teachers that's you. So I will liaise with you for a date and time. Thank you.
We have one question that remains unasked. Councillor Harper, would you put your question in writing, please, as we've run out of time? No, I'm sorry, we've run out of time. We now come to item 104, statements by the leader and executive members, and we have 20 minutes for that. Please, would you indicate? Okay, thank you. Crew, please, first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two short announcements. The first is that we have successfully concluded the appointment of a new permanent Director of Children's Services who will be starting on the 8th of April. Her name is Emma Cockrell, and we look forward to welcoming her to the Council. And my delight at this appointment is tinged with a little sadness, though, because it means that in a few months we will be saying goodbye to Helen Watson, our Interim Director, and I will be very sad to see her go. The other announcement is to draw everyone's attention to the fact that government statistics show that 95% of the 2 to 2.5-year-olds in Wokingham Borough reach all of their development targets, the highest percentage in England by some margin. This featured in a story in The Guardian last week. Now, I'm not claiming that the council is solely responsible for this, but our early years team certainly deserves some credit for it, and I congratulate them. Thank you.
Lindsay, please.
Thank you. After waiting for many months, the government eventually issued their new planning document known as the National Planning Policy Framework, NPPF for short, just before last Christmas. Despite the noise, it was very disappointing and I believe a missed opportunity. What I would like to know is why the government has decided to penalise an area like ours, where we have more than met, over-provided is the word, its housing targets, when other parts of the country have not. Despite this bad news, the council has been working on how to improve the current draft local plan update. This includes policies to ensure that future homes are better able to meet climate change, are better designed and insulated so that they will be less expensive to heat and to live in. 2, we have identified 13 valued landscapes in the borough where we plan to protect these important and valued views for the future. And 3, we have increased the number of green open spaces from the original 8 sites in the current draft local plan update to around 100 such sites. Areas designated and approved in the new local plan will be protected for the future and have the same status and protection as Green Belt. Thank you.
Stephen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council's now received a formal variation offer from SSEN for connection to the grid in summer 2026. The variation offer has been accepted and the paperwork has been signed and returned to SSEN. This is an extremely positive step for the project in terms of delivery and leaves us in a very enviable position when compared with other solar farm projects across the country that have experienced really quite significant delays. Having been told in March of last year the solar farm could not connect to the grid until 2037, this revised offer of 2026 is testament to the ongoing engagement and relationship building with both National Grid and SSEN that has occurred over recent months. It should be remembered that the solar farm is not only a key priority of the Council's Climate Emergency Action Plan, it will also generate a considerable income for the Council, which will in time help to fund other Council projects and services. And I should like to take this opportunity, Madam Mayor, to thank Sarah Kerr, the former executive member, and all the Council officers involved in producing this successful and very welcome outcome.
Thank you. We now move on to statements from council-owned companies. Will you please indicate if you wish to speak? That's a no, thank you. Let's move on to item 106, motions, and we have 30 minutes per motion. Motion 511, submitted by Councillor Crew Bray. Crew, would you like to move your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a seconder who I believe is Phil Cunnington. Yes, he's over there.
Yes, that's me, Madam Mayor. Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you. Members, I would like to commend to you the Berkshire Observatory website. Split by local authority, it has all the data you could possibly want about our borough and can be used to inform all sorts of policies and strategies. One of the things the data shows is that not everyone in the borough is equal when it comes to their health. For example, in the 2021 census, a higher proportion of people reported they were in very good or good health in the wealthier parts of the borough than in those we think of as being less wealthy. Another example is that the percentage of the population who find their life is limited a lot by a disability is significantly higher in our less wealthy wards than in the wealthier ones. This shows not only that health inequalities exist within the borough, but that there is an association between health and wealth. Tackling those health inequalities needs to go hand in hand with tackling poverty. For many of us, social justice would be enough to warrant taking action. But if that is not enough for you, money comes into it. If we can improve the health of those who have the least good health, we can not only make their lives better, but reduce the cost to the public purse of dealing with their ill health. Prevention, where it is possible, is better than cure, but also better than funding long-term treatment and providing for long-term additional needs. That should be enough to convince you that tackling health inequality is a good idea, even if you don't buy the moral argument. What I've talked about so far is the health of the general population, but there will always be people with disabilities, people with serious medical conditions, people with mental health issues, people with dementia, and so on. We must not forget them. Indeed, we must also help them by providing the right support services and by trying to ensure as much as we can that they also don't suffer inequalities in the way they get treatment or the way their needs are catered for. The good news is that the Council is already doing a lot of this. What this motion does is to encourage us to be more systematic in how we go about exercising our public health responsibilities, using the already existing Marmot principles as outlined in the motion, in order to make the most difference to our residents and to ensure we use our resources as wisely as possible. I would encourage everyone to support this motion so that we can have a whole council response to meeting our population's health needs in the most effective way.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Andy?
We need to.
Andy, sorry, before you speak, it's Phil's chance as the seconder to speak.
Please, I'll reserve my right to speak after.
Thank you. Andy?
Thank you. I'm going to keep this very, very quick because in principle, obviously, everybody wants the outcomes outlined by the Marmot Review. Now, the Marmot Review was initiated in 2008 by one of the previous Labour Health Secretaries of State. The review reported, I think, in February Thank you. The report was published in February 2010, and then a few months later there was a general election, and obviously the government changed. Now, 10 years after 2010, in 2020, there was a review of the original Marmot report and an assessment as to how well the principles and the ambitions outlined in the initial report had been achieved. And that review made clear the absolutely devastating effects of austerity on the ambitions outlined in that report. So it is about money. The review of the original report makes clear it is about money. It's not just about moving policies and bits of paper around our policy documents. And so it sort of sticks, certainly in my throat slightly, that the parties responsible for austerity 14 years later are now pretending, or not pretending, perhaps now genuinely there has been a change of heart, but are positioning themselves as being opposed to the outcomes which their policies enacted. Now, 2010 was obviously a Conservative victory. I sometimes wonder what would have happened in Wokingham if the result had gone a little bit differently, and if perhaps John Redwood had lost the election. But who would have won the election instead of John Redwood in that year? It would have been Prue, and Prue would have found herself in Parliament voting for the austerity measures that the 2020 report makes clear destroyed the ambitions of the original Marmot report. So it's not the outcomes that we're opposed to. We all agree on those. It's the slight smell of, you know what, remember where you've come from. Thank you.
Stephen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Anyone think there are elections coming up? I support this motion. The Marmot principles, which is what this is all about, the Marmot principles are ones I hope we can all endorse. And I think Andy has said that. In essence, they're about tackling health inequalities. As the executive member responsible for affordable housing, I've come to appreciate how important good quality housing is to public health and well-being. And yes, this is about resource, but that's one of the things that the council is trying to put resource into. As the executive member responsible for partnerships, I can see how the Marmot principles can give focus to our work with external partners. And a key external partner here is obviously the NHS. As leader of the council, I can see how the Marmot principles can be enacted best by all departments and directorates in the council working together to achieve better health outcomes for our residents. And I hope we can all look forward and actually try and think about how we can actually tackle health inequalities in the borough and perhaps refrain from making the kind of political points that Andy felt compelled to make.
Thank you. David Hare.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Marmot report states that people with higher socio-economic position in society have a greater array of life chances and more opportunities to lead flourishing lives. They also have better health. The two are linked. The more favoured people are, socially and economically, the better their health. This link between social conditions and health is not a footnote to the real concerns with health, healthcare and unhealthy behaviour. It should become the main focus, as it does in the Marmot report. If everyone had these equal life chances, surely this goal worth striving for. Indeed, we can go a long way to achieving that remarkable improvement by giving more people the life chances currently enjoyed by the few. The benefits of such efforts will be wider than lives saved. People in society will be better off in many ways, in the circumstances in which they are born, grow, live, work, and age. People will see improved well-being, better mental health, and less disability. Their children would flourish, and they would live in sustainable communities. As a society, we must all want to give every child the best start in life possible, to enable all people to maximise their capabilities and have control over their lives, to ensure a healthy standard of living for all, to create fair employment and good work for all, to create and develop healthy and sustainable places and communities, and to strengthen the role and impact of ill health prevention. As an authority, we try in many ways to ensure that we are supporting these principles already. As a Marmot borough, we want to see the Stark division of life and health chances to be worked on so that we can all enjoy the benefits and health of the few. Becoming a Marmot borough is about starting to right the inequalities that exist, even in Wokingham.
Bill, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I slightly wasn't expecting to have to speak, but I'm very happy to do so. Very happy to support this. Unlike and perhaps other people who may have a political point to make, I certainly don't. I was not around when the Marmot principles were first thought about. I joined the party that I joined because I felt that I needed to bring my experience and knowledge and my wish to change within that group. And that is exactly what I've been doing. I hope everybody will acknowledge since I've been here. The principle of what is proposed is to be a leader. No matter that this is an old idea, if you want 10 years or 13 years, is to be a leader in the country. It's very easy as a wealthy borough for that to mask the inequalities that might hide therein. An example of that, which shocks me, you will understand why, that someone living in my ward of Norris has got a life expectancy of 7 years less than Stephen in his Twyford ward. I have every intention of making that a much smaller gap or even overtake it for all the right reasons. But we need to support this. We need to make sure that we implement it. We need to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to have aspirations for their family, for them to understand what those aspirations are and to take advantage of any offers of help that are given to them in order to most successfully deliver healthy people across the borough, regardless of their initial upbringing or their income at the first stages. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. It's a marvellous thing for us to do. We still are groundbreaking in as much as we're in the first tranche of authorities doing this. And so I think we should be very proud that Wokingham is taking this forward.
Prue, do you want to finish?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we've heard from David and from Phil why this is important. I think we all know it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to devote the rest of my summing up to being political. Had I won in 2010, I rather think that I would not have been the only extra Liberal Democrat in the government, and the government might have been very different. So I doubt if the same policies would have applied. However, the country chose to elect a minority Conservative with some Lib Dem support government. It happened, but I am glad that Andy did at least agree that I was genuine in bringing this. So I thank him for that. We can only do what we can do on this council, and we need to leave it to Clive to defeat John Redwood and get rid of this terrible government, which I think even Andy would agree is considerably worse than the one that was elected in 2010.
Thank you. We're now going to move to the vote. If you want to vote to agree the motion, please show. Don't think we need to go any further, but we will just for the formality. If you want to vote against the motion, please show. And abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. We now move on to motion 512. In front of you, you have Rebecca Marget's motion as amended in the supplementary papers. Rebecca, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a seconder as well.
Who's your seconder? Lindsay, thank you.
Thank you. Planning obligations under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 are a mechanism which make a developmental proposal acceptable in planning terms that would not otherwise be acceptable. The common uses of these planning obligations can include securing affordable housing or to secure financial contributions to provide infrastructure. If the Section 106 is not complied with, it is enforceable against the person that entered into the obligation and any subsequent owner. The Section 106 can be enforced by injunction. The planning application decision for Arborfield Green was granted in 2015, and residents soon began moving into new properties from 2017 onwards. If you have several hours, several days of your life spare, you can search and look at the detailed documents around the development of the SDL because they are extensive. These include the legal agreements for the completion of the sports pavilion, allotments, skate park, children's play areas, a community centre, a supermarket, with the agreement that 25% of the commercial floor space to be completed by the occupation of the 1,000th residential unit. Roll on to 2024. We have a community and village who have none of these promised facilities, but I say yet, who have to get in their car to visit a supermarket and have not been provided with the vision that they brought into when purchasing their new properties. The developers continue to build further parcels, more residential properties, yet progress is glacially slow with the community facilities that the developers are legally required to deliver. Whilst I do acknowledge there have been mitigating circumstances in the past from all parties, and our council must now hold developers to account, our residents do deserve better. And we must learn from what has happened at Arborfield Green and ensure that moving forward that this doesn't happen again with any new SDLs. The motion that I am proposing today requests that a report is made available to all members and relevant community groups twice a year, detailing the progress made with Section 106 agreements across major developments. And I'm grateful to Councillor Ferris for his support with this motion and the work that is being done to move this current project forward. This motion will provide transparency and accountability so that legal agreements should not be allowed to slip and developers meet the obligations that are legally binding to them.
Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? Thank you.
We move on to the vote.
We move straight on to the vote. Can I have a show of hands for the motion, please? And against? And abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. We're in a funny sort of world tonight where there's an awful lot of an agreement going on. It's the target now is to get through all the motions. Right, motion 513, submitted by Ian Shenton. Ian, do you have a seconder? Thank you, Sarah. Ian, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If my voice will hold up. When I first proposed this motion as a member of the opposition, I referenced estimates by the Smithsonian Institution in Washington that the species loss rate of our planet is at least 1,000 times the rate of previous millennia. They're mostly things like invertebrates rather than iconic species, but they're all vital to the existence of some other species. Eventually, that growing cascade of loss will threaten us, Homo sapiens, because the sixth mass extinction is upon us. We're in an ecological emergency. The then administration was unmoved by my eloquence, and by means of an amendment, I diverted the motion to a task and finish group. And in due course, the recommendations of the task and finish group appeared and have been incorporated. The motion has been further strengthened with substantial officer input, for which I am very grateful to the officers concerned. Procedure dictates that it now returns to council. Hence, I'm proposing tonight this council goes beyond the ecological considerations that are currently incorporated in some of our activities and declares an ecological emergency, as it has already declared a climate emergency, placing both equally at the heart of our future actions. In that way, in our small fragment of this planet, we can protect our existing biodiversity and potentially even increase it. Nobody will do it for us. The responsibility is ours, and we will not be forgiven by future generations if we fail to take that responsibility.
Does anyone wish to speak against this motion? I think I need to take my pills now. Right, what am I doing now, Susan, please? I've got lots. Right, we're going to the vote on the motion. Please can I show of hands for the motion? And against? And abstentions? The motion is carried. I think we're going to finish before 11. Right, motion 514 submitted by Andrew Mickleborough. Andrew, do you have a seconder?
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Councillor Jane Ainsley.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like to speak?
Thank you for the opportunity to present the important motion before you. Despite their resilience and wonderful achievements, many care-experienced people face significant barriers that impact them throughout their lives. Society too often does not take the needs of care-experienced persons into account, or take the actions that can help to change their lives for the better. We have an opportunity tonight to help address this in practical and meaningful ways. In summary, this motion asks our council to formally treat care experienced as if it were a protected characteristic as defined under the Equalities Act 2010. Doing so would ensure that decisions on future services and policies made and adopted by the council are assessed and consider the impact on people with care experience. It would also seek the development of specific actions within the remit and the capacity of the council to reduce the disadvantage and discrimination that care experienced people face. My correspondence with officers and executive members has reassured me that if this motion is passed, meaningful actions can realistically be undertaken that will help our care experienced residents. For instance, care experience would be added to the council's equalities impact assessments. Tailored training and guidance would be offered to help officers engaging with care experienced people. As part of our council's commitment to partnership working, we can also use the opportunities available to the council to raise awareness and opportunities for practical action amongst partners such as in housing services and in the voluntary and business sectors and the police. The National Independent Review of Children's Social Care, published in May 22, recommended that government should make care experience a protected characteristic. Very widespread support includes from Catch-22, a vibrant national organisation providing a voice to care leavers. Between August 2022 and October 23, 63 local authorities passed similar motions, with others like ours using wording based on wording by the local government association. More have passed the motion since then, or expressed their intention to bring the motion to their councils. They passed this motion, as I trust all of us will wish to do tonight, because they too believe that it has the potential to make a positive and meaningful difference in the lives of this cohort of our residents.
Does anyone wish to speak against this motion?
Point of order? Do we? Yeah. Sorry, I'm receiving coaching from the back.
So am I.
Yeah, that's. So we have an amendment that we would like to move to, or I have, sorry, should take responsibility for my own actions. I have an amendment that I would like to, it's certainly not in any way a disagreement with it's an addition. So it's the amendment which is here.
Okay, I need to give the seconder opportunity to speak first. Is there a seconder for your amendment?
I would like to second the amendment, but I think you need to ask Andrew if he will accept it.
Yeah. Hang a minute.
Okay, I'm advised that I am able to say that we accept in full the amendment that is before all members of the council.
Okay, does anyone want to speak against the amended motion? Has everyone seen a copy of it? Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, I can go straight to the vote.
Okay.
Okay, we're now going to take a vote on the motion as amended.
Madam Mayor, point of order, does not the mover of the amendment have the right to speak on their amendment?
Oh, right, okay.
No, you guys are thinking of the main motion.
So 3 minutes.
Right, okay.
Right, because the amendment has been accepted and has now become the substantive, we can move straight to the vote. So can I have a show of all hands in favour of the amended motion? And those against? And any abstentions? The motion as amended is carried. Thank you. I've just had confirmation that we have finished the meeting. Yeah. It's unbelievable before 11 o'clock.
There we go, Bill.
We have some news. Yes, the portrait is on its way. It's only taken, I don't know how long. It will be put up in the chamber as soon as we can. We're going